Hi, I'm New York Times Metro reporter Jeff Mays sitting in for Sam Roberts. On this program, we feature leading newsmakers and the New York Times journalists who cover them. This week, New York Times visual reporter Eden Weingart joins us to discuss how ranked choice voting shaped the city's 2021 mayoral race and what voters should now know before the June 24th primary. But first, I'd like to welcome Times contributor David Nasaw. His provocative New York Times essay, Elon Musk Thought He Could Break History, Instead It Broke Him, analyzes the world's richest man and his failed attempt to wield power as an unelected co-president in the Trump administration. Mr. Nasaw is an acclaimed biographer and emeritus professor of history at the CUNY Graduate Center. Welcome.
Thank you.
So, let's just go back to the beginning. Tell us a little bit about how this relationship between President Trump and Elon Musk came about.
Musk was not an early supporter of Trump. To the contrary, he was a rather vocal opponent. And if you look back at what Musk said about Trump up until just before the election, I mean, it's vicious, it's nasty. Soon after Trump, the assassination attempt where Trump got a hole in his ear, Musk came out in support of him. And the critical moment in their relationship happened when Musk decided that he was going to have an interview with Trump. It was going to go on, for hours. It was a disaster from the beginning. The feed went in and out. There were delays and this and that. It finally got going. And Musk fawned all over Trump. It was almost embarrassing. And then for me, as a historian, the most interesting thing that happened was, at some point in this interview, Musk shuts up Trump, who's rambling and wandering all over the place. And he says, what we need and what I want to do, what I'd be happy to do, would be to cut costs. I'd be happy to end. We should have a Department of Government Efficiency, and I'd be happy to take care of it. And Trump says, hey, that's a good idea. He says, you cut a lot of jobs, didn't you? Yeah, that's a good idea. So Musk invents on X, live before the American public, his own job. And Trump says, great, let's roll with it.
And now Elon Musk is not the first wealthy business person to sort of try to enter politics and go to Washington. What do you think makes him distinct in that situation?
Well, every business leader who's come to Washington has come with a distinct mission. Most of them, Secretary of the Treasury, they knew what they were doing. That's a defined role. Others came as advisors for a short period of time. They knew what they were doing. Everybody knew what they were doing. Musk made up his own position. He went from being head of Doge, which he created and named and publicized, to being the presidential best buddy at Mar-a-Lago, to being an unelected co-president. And that was his falling. He couldn't get there. We have one president, and that's the one we elect. We don't have a co-president. No place in the Constitution does it say, the president shall nominate a co-president.
Right. I know there was a lot of talk about this photo opportunity in the White House where President Trump is seated and Elon Musk is standing there. Some people were talking about the power dynamics there. Like, what was the sort of breaking point in their relationship? What has been the breaking point?
Yeah, I think the breaking point came rather early. We didn't pick it up. But the day after the inauguration, Trump has one of his photo ops with Sam Altman, who's Musk's, arch enemy. And Trump announces Sam Altman and his partners are going to invest $100 billion in new data centers and to generate the electricity to run them. And we're so excited. This is the beginning of the Trump administration of MAGA. The new world is here. At 11:45 that night, Musk goes on X and says, this is all a farce. Altman doesn't have the money. Nobody has the money. This is going nowhere. Now, you don't do that. You don't do that to the president. And then he went on from there. The one law of Trump land is you celebrate, you support, you cheer on Trump and his policies. You don't oppose him. You don't say anything negative. And Musk continued to do that. The last straw, really, was on the tariff policy. The day after the so-called Liberation Day, where Trump appears with his huge chart of all the tariffs, that same day, Musk comes out and says, well, I'm in favor of zero tariffs for Europe. We should have free trade with Europe. No, don't do that.
The phrase you used was dime store Icarus. Is that accurate? Describe these situations?
Yeah, I thought so. Look, Icarus flew too close to the sun. He didn't heed the warnings. His wings melted and he fell into the sea. Musk did the same thing. And everybody had to know it. I wrote a piece for the Times the week after the election. And I said, the lead was, sorry, Elon, but this bromance is not going to last. You can't have two men who are used to being in charge in the same room. It just doesn't work. For a time, Musk made believe that he was working under Trump, but it didn't work out that way.
So where is Elon now? Is he still in D.C.? Has he completely decamped? Where is he at now?
The day after his announcement that he was going to spend less time in Washington and more at Tesla, he abandoned his office. He left his office in the White House. Susie Wiles, the chief of staff, announced. He will continue. He went with dozens of other corporate leaders on the trip to the Middle East with Trump. He'll be around. But his influence, his power, his attempt to be co-president is over. He's going back to his businesses. He had to go back to Tesla because Tesla was in lots and lots of trouble. But his other businesses are thriving. And they're thriving because Trump and the Trump administration is going to throw huge contracts at all of his businesses.
Right. And what did he accomplish at Doge while there? Are there any substantial accomplishments? I know there's been questions about the actual level of savings. The numbers have been revised multiple times. Does he have any accomplishments to hang his hat on for the time he was in Washington?
I think they're minor. Every day, his wall of receipts, all the money he's going to save, changes. And every day, the people he laid off or rehired, some of the grants are brought back. I think Trump wanted him to be the fall guy. It didn't work out that way. When Republicans went home to give town halls, the major criticism, they were asked, how can you support Musk with what he's doing? He's taken away our jobs, he's taken away our grants, we can't go to the VA center anymore. So I think that backfired on Trump. I think when we do the final accounting, we're going to find that Musk accomplished very little in actual cuts, and he created lots of problems for the Republicans.
And back to Tesla, I wrote about the city comptroller, Brad Lander, trying to file a lawsuit against Tesla, saying that, Elon Musk was not performing his duties as chief executive and president. So why was Tesla so damaged by this sort of public attempt by Elon Musk to wield power?
Yeah, Tesla, a lot of the people who bought Tesla cars, they were the same people who the decade before bought Priuses. They leaned left. They were climate activists. They believed that in buying an electric car, they were saving the planet. They were the first to go after not climate-saving Musk, but MAGA Musk. And all over the country, and more particularly in Europe, in Germany, people tried to trade in their Teslas. They put them in the garage. They tried to sell them. They put bumper stickers saying, sorry, my other car is, believes in freedom. The Tesla has been in trouble for a while. The Cyber, have you ever seen one of these trucks?
Yes.
What is it? It looks like it's modeled on a rhinoceros. Tesla's in trouble, and it's been in trouble since Musk went and spent all his time at X. I don't know if he's going to save it, but the optics were not good. As Brad Lander noted, you can't have the CEO of a company running 6 other companies and being the assistant to the president in Washington at the same time. Doesn't work.
Right. And Elon Musk was also a prolific donor to President Trump, some of his campaign entities. I'm wondering what does this relationship or this situation tell us about that relationship between wealth and power?
Yeah, very interesting. We will never know. The pundits can't quite figure out what the Musk money, it's more than $200 million, how it boosted and whether it boosted Trump. The court's still out on that one. More interesting, on April 1st, there was an election for a state Supreme Court seat in Wisconsin. Musk gave $20 million for the Republican Trump-backed candidate. He then went to Green Bay and jumped up on a stage and waved his arms and said to the people of the district, if you elect the Democrat and stand the civilization, it had the opposite effect. It brought out Musk's antics and Musk's millions, brought out more Democrats than Republicans. On April 2nd, the day after the election in Wisconsin, Politico reported that Trump had told his people that Musk was not going to be around Washington for long. He had turned from a political asset to a political liability. Americans don't want their elections to be bought, and that it was clear what Musk and Trump were trying to do in Wisconsin and what they were going to try to do in the midterm elections.
I'm wondering if you think, will this have any lingering effect in the midterm elections, which is still a little ways off? And is it possible for Elon to make any sort of political comeback?
I think Elon will make a political comeback in Republican primaries. In Republican primaries where only Republicans are voting, the candidates that he backs, which will be the Trump candidates, will do well. In general elections, I think the opposite is the case. In Wisconsin, the major Democratic campaign rally and motto was, don't let Musk elect the state Supreme Court judge.
Right. You're a historian. Tell us in 30 seconds, how is history going to view Elon Musk?
I can predict the past, can't tell you much about the future. I think Musk is going to be a singular feature in American history, but whether he will have a lasting impact on politics, we don't know. He will have a lasting impact in many other areas of our lives.
Thanks, David, for an important historical perspective on today's politics. Coming up next, we'll explore how ranked choice voting is reshaping New York City's Democratic mayoral primary. I'm now joined by Eden Weingart, visual reporter for the New York Times. Eden created the interactive visual for the Times' comprehensive analysis, How Will Ranked Choice Voting Work in the New York City Mayoral Primary? It breaks down the complex mechanics of the voting system that will determine the outcome of June's Democratic primary. Thanks for joining us, Eden.
Thanks for having me.
So for the uninitiated, let's pretend I just arrived in New York City. I don't know anything about politics or anything. How would you explain ranked choice voting to me?
So ranked choice voting is a system where voters, instead of just voting for one candidate, they can rank in New York City up to 5 candidates. And how this ends up working in the election is all those first choice votes are counted up and tallied in the first round of voting. And if no candidate exceeds a 50% threshold, then it starts what's called an automatic runoff. Sometimes ranked choice voting is called an instant runoff. And so then that goes to the people who voted for that lead candidate. Their votes stay with everyone who stayed in the race. But through a series of rounds, the candidate in last place is eliminated, and then their votes are redistributed to the next choice on a voter's ballot. And it is a kind of a hard thing. We ended up doing a visual for this exact reason. But you can think of it as ranking your choices, and you don't have to choose just one. And when those choices are eliminated, it goes to the next one, and so forth. And so that continues until there are only 2 candidates left.
Right, and so voters can choose up to 5 candidates. This time, I believe there are 11 candidates in the race, potentially, and that's a little less than last time. I'm wondering how you think that will that change the rank vote dynamics at all?
But yeah, from 11 to 13, or 13 in 2021 to this time 11, there's not a huge difference. It's pretty similar. There are a lot of candidates. And there are more than the choices that voters will have on their ballot. And I think we'll see a similar sort of thing with a lot of candidates getting eliminated in the first few rounds and then it getting narrowed down. And this is only the second time that New York City has used ranked choice voting for this election. The first time was in the previous primary. So I'm personally interested to see if people have gotten more used to it and if those patterns change.
I'm wondering what did you learn at all about voter behavior from examining the 2021 ranked choice primary?
So yeah, we in 2021 because ranked choice voting is something that people get kind of confused about, we explained it with kind of a more abstract like candidate A, candidate B. But this time around, we thought we'd walk people through using the example from 2021. And when we looked at that data, we also saw that 13% of voters had only ranked one candidate. So they had ranked one candidate and left 4 spots blank, which was kind of a surprise. And also the fact that by the end of the election, 140,000 ballots were counted as what's called inactive or exhausted, which means that none of the candidates that they had ranked were in the final 2. So those were a couple of things that we wanted to look into more.
I'm wondering, some political groups are urging people to leave certain individuals off of their ballot, namely former Governor Andrew Cuomo. Mayor Eric Adams is no longer in the Democratic primary. But I'm wondering how leaving a candidate off the ballot affects the vote.
So yeah, it seems to be that there's a misconception that, oh, I like this candidate the least, I'll rank them 5th on my ballot. But actually, ranking someone at all could result in casting a vote for them. So let's say you ranked a candidate you don't have particular taste for 5th, but all 4 of your first choices are eliminated in early rounds. At the end of the day, you voted for that 5th candidate. So I think these groups are saying, don't rank the people you don't want to be mayor because of that misconception.
Right. And I think you also uncovered last time there was a decent percentage of people that ranked only one candidate.
Yes, so over 6% of voters ranked Eric Adams first and left the rest of the choices blank. And this is an election where, with 13 candidates and 5 choices, there were over 70,000 ballot orders. that were cast, and the single most popular one was Eric Adams first, and the rest blank.
Yeah, and the Eric Adams, of course, was in a close election with Catherine Garcia. Tell me about that, because she came from behind a little bit and did much better than many people expected.
That's true. So yeah, in our visualization, we kind of show in the first rounds, I believe up until round 7, Adams is in first and Maya Wiley is in second. And then in round 7, there are 4 candidates left, with Andrew Yang being in last place. He's eliminated, and his votes are redistributed to his voters' next choice. And that's where we see Yang had actually cross-endorsed Garcia, and we saw 45% of his vote go to Catherine Garcia, which propelled her into second place.
Wow, so theoretically, you could sort of game theory this out, right? You could have candidates cross-endorsing and, trying to affect the electorate.
Yeah, and I think one thing we also noticed from 2021 is I think people have taken note that that cross-endorsement did work. Yang said, hey, rank me first, please, but please rank Garcia second, and people listened.
Right.
And that's something that we're looking out for to see if that happens this year.
Did you learn anything about the different neighborhoods in examining the ranked choice voting patterns?
We didn't look at things at that kind of granularity. My colleague Keith Collins just looked at kind of campaign finance in that way, but we haven't looked at voting in that way.
All right, great. And we're in 2025 now. We have former Governor Cuomo is leading most polls by 44%. I'm wondering, do you think the landscape at all might shift as we move towards the June primary with people considering ranked choice voting?
I think something to look out for is a cross endorsement. Andrew Cuomo is polling at 44% with Zohran Mamdani in second with 22. This was in the most recent Marist poll. But in that same poll, they kind of simulated all of the rounds playing out. And at the end, Cuomo had 60%, Mamdani had 40%. So Mamdani did seem to gather some from those redistributed votes from candidates who were eliminated. So I think the thing to look out for is, are any of them starting to cross-endorse each other? Is there some sort of, like you're saying, there's movements to not rank Cuomo, but will that have any effect to the point where a second or third place candidate can accrue more to overcome that deficit?
So to get into the weeds a little bit, you talked about how 140,000 ballots were inactive by the final round, but there was also something called batch elimination. Let's get into the weeds. Maybe explain what that actually means.
So yeah, batch elimination, it's nothing voters really need to worry about, but we're getting in the weeds. So in certain rounds, there might be multiple candidates who have such low numbers that it becomes mathematically impossible for them to win the election. So I think that happened in round 6. There were 3 candidates whose total votes, like all added up, would not exceed the next highest candidate. So instead of doing one round where the person in 8th place gets eliminated, then another round with the person in 7th, you can eliminate 3 people per round. So it just speeds up that process and makes it so that there are fewer rounds.
Right. Tell us a little bit about getting into this project. How did the idea come about to explain this in a visual way?
So in 2021, I worked on a different kind of visualization of the same process. It's a thing that people find confusing, and I work on a team called Digital News Design, and we work with reporters and editors on different desks to find stories that would benefit from being visualized or visual elements outside of a traditional story. And that one seemed ripe to be explained in a clearer way to people. And like I said, in that example, we didn't have real data to work off of. And this year we knew, okay, people still are confused about this. I'm still getting asked about it by friends and family. How can we explain it in a clearer way? And looking at the data, we thought, okay, we could walk people through this with the real people, with how it actually happened, and at the same time reveal what might happen this time. How cross endorsements might come in,
right.
The fact that a candidate in third there's a lot of movement that can happen.
Right, and as we said, Governor Cuomo has been placing first in many of these polls, but right behind him is Zohran Mamdani, who's a left-leaning state senator from Queens, he has consistently placed second. I'm wondering how you think that ranked choice dynamic could affect his chances in this election.
Well, so yeah, Andrew Cuomo, if we're to trust this poll, for instance, he's not reaching that 50% threshold in the first round to win the election outright. So what that means is it opens up the opportunity for redistributed votes from lower down candidates. If they all get funneled into one candidate, Mamdani, for instance, that could have an effect and could see a switching in the final rounds.
Right, and looking forward to this process, I mean, do you have any tips for voters? Like, how should they prepare for this? Should they, should you have your 5 before you go in, or decide who's not going to be on your ballot? Like, how should voters approach this?
Yeah, I think familiarizing yourself with the system, like I said, there are a few misconceptions. One, you don't have to rank all 5. If there aren't 5 people who you'd like to see as mayor, right, you're not required to rank 5 people, but you're also exercising your right to participate in the democracy by saying, I have these 3 options, and you're given more. And proponents of ranked choice say that it gives people more of a chance to show their support from a candidate who may not win the election, but they want to show their support, and they can vote for a more prominent candidate lower down.
Right. If you're someone who supports a candidate that doesn't look like they're doing well in the polls, I'm wondering, should they be on your ballot? Should you be supporting some of the lesser known candidates? How can that affect the outcome?
Well, so one of the advantages of ranked choice voting, according to the proponents of it, is it kind of prevents the possibility of a candidate spoiling an election. So you can, for instance, cast your vote, rank someone first who, maybe is polling at 2%, but second, rank one of the top contenders. And so, in the first round, if the 50% threshold isn't reached, your first choice gets eliminated, but then your second vote goes to your preference of those front runners. So it's a way of voicing your support for that candidate, but not throwing away your vote.
Well, I'm sure you'll be watching this as we get towards the June 24th primary. Maybe you'll do something afterwards just showing what happened.
Yeah, we can break it down and try to help people understand what happened.
Great. Thanks, Eden, for helping us understand ranked choice voting visually. That's it for this edition of Close Up. Sitting in for Sam Roberts and for CUNY TV, I'm Jeff Mays. And don't forget to download the CUNY TV app, where you can catch our weekly program on the go, anytime, anywhere.